With this episode, we're going to take a short break from 858 to answer a really popular question. And that question is, can you default an accordion item to expanded? Well, first off, what is an accordion? An accordion is an expandable, collapsible region placed on a page to group like items. When implemented properly, accordions are a very clever way to maximize screen space. So here I'm using an accordion to group navigational links. And you'll notice the default behavior when the page loads. Do you see that the accordion is fully collapsed? Now, if I select a heading, of course, it expands. But wait, can you ever get back to a fully collapsed state? No, actually you can't. But hey, having an accordion fully collapsed probably isn't valuable anyway. Actually, what I really want is to be able to have one of the accordion items fully expanded on page load. And that's the question. Can you default one of these sections to fully expanded on page load? Unfortunately, there isn't a delivered property for this, but we can make one. With a CSS class name and a little JavaScript fragment, we can select a heading and have it auto expand on page load. Now, the page we are reviewing uses the master detail framework, which is going to complicate our solution a little bit. So let's set that aside for a minute. I put together a very simple accordion page we can use for testing. Notice just has some very simple content. And what I'm going to do is inspect this page and use my browser tools to mock up a solution. So I can see here that the two sections, the two headings for the accordion, are really represented as HTML sections. Now, these sections are actually items that I can style from Application Designer. So anything I mock up here in the web browser tools, I can then apply as a class, for example, on the Fluid tab in Application Designer. So I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to go with, say, the second item, just because it's a little bit different. Usually you'd want to expand the first item, but oh wait, we would actually expect that to happen by default, but it doesn't. And just to show that this is working a little bit differently, I'm going to specifically select the second one. So I'm going to create a style class here, JSM expanded. Now notice that word create. This JSM expanded style class does not exist. It's not defined anywhere. It's not applying styling, colors, font. It's here to tag my target. So I can then write some JavaScript to identify that tagged item. So let's mock that up here really quickly. So we'll use document.querySelector and then our CSS selector, just like we would if we're writing a CSS selector. It's .jsm_expanded. And notice that the tool nicely highlights the item that was identified by my selector and shows me that in the output. And in fact, if I hit enter, then it's going to show that in the output fully. But we don't actually want the expanded JSM_expanded item. What we want is the hyperlink behind it or inside of it, because we can see that the hyperlink inside has a click handler. And it's this click handler that we want to invoke. So I'm going to continue extending the selector .ps-link. We can see that's the class name here, .pslink. And we can see down below that that is, in fact, what's being selected. And then at the very end, I'm just going to invoke the click handler, .click. Perfect. You notice every time I invoke that, it's changing the content. So let's stop with it right there and take this back into Application Designer and persist it. So first thing we need to do is tag the item we want to be the default open item. So on the super cool image here, you notice in App Designer I have some text content. That's our outer group box for the heading for the first item. And then a super cool image, that relates to the second item. So a super cool image, I'm going to tag that as the default item, JSM_expanded. And then in our page activate PeopleCode, let's apply this. We're going to use the add onload script function to queue our JavaScript to load or to execute, to be invoked during the onload event. So when the HTML is loaded into our browser, this tells PeopleSoft to queue up a little JavaScript fragment. I'm going to save this, and let's test it out. So a quick refresh, and sure enough, we see that the second item was in fact expanded. Perfect. All right, that's exactly what we wanted. Can you implement that? And the answer is yes. So let's take the solution now back into the other component we were looking at. This one here, it's not as simple. For example, in our Fluid 2 class, we use the accordion in the side page 1. What I just showed you would work awesome with side page 1. Now, what we're seeing here in the addresses component is something that looks like side page 1, but it's actually using master detail. Now, the key difference with master detail is it doesn't trigger an onload event. When the content loads into the side page here, it doesn't trigger any JavaScripts that are queued for execution on load. They're ignored. So we need a different approach here for the master detail. We're going to keep the same tagging concept. We just need to invoke that JavaScript slightly differently. So what I have is on my page, I added an HTML area to the bottom of the page. So if we were to inspect, you would see the HTML area here below the accordion. And the idea is to inject a little JavaScript fragment into that HTML area to execute as the page is loading. See, the browser by itself, it's going to identify all those items, and as soon as it sees some JavaScript, it's going to stop interpreting the page, invoke that JavaScript, and then continue on. As long as our JavaScript is below the accordion, it's going to do exactly what we want. And what I want it to do is auto-expand the biographical section on load. So I have this little fragment here, and if we were to inspect, look at the HTML here, you would notice that it is in fact that exact same JavaScript wrapped in some script tags so it can be invoked here in the middle of an HTML page. I'll hit refresh, and perfect! Look at that. The biographical section was in fact enabled. So in this case, in this scenario, we specifically tagged an HTML element, a very specific section, and said, default that section to expanded. What if we wanted to write that a little bit more generically? Maybe, for example, just expand the first one. It's not been tagged. It could be any accordion. Just expand the first one. So I have a little HTML fragment, or I should say JavaScript fragment, to expand the first child, as you can see here from my CSS selector. I'm showing this to you because it is an option, but I don't know that I like it. And the reason is because what if you had multiple accordions? Which one would this expand? Would it expand the top element in every one of those accordions? Maybe that's what you want. I don't know. What if you had nested accordions? Could you have nested accordions? If you did, how would that behave? So that's why I like the idea of specifically targeting one group box and saying, this is the one I want to expand. Are you interested in learning more? We cover the accordion group boxes in our Fluid 2 class and the master detail framework in our Fluid 3 class. We would love to have you in a future class. Check out our website to see when we will be offering these courses next. Now, if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe for more content. And we look forward to seeing you in the next episode.